The day I saw 25,000 gallons of pristine mountain water absolutely detonate through my HOA president's custom-built basement ceiling, I knew I was witnessing the single most expensive, satisfying physics lesson of her entire narcissistic life. I stood there, boots squelching on what used to be a very expensive Moroccan wool rug, watching Clark Sterling's $100,000 home theater system dissolve under the rushing current, while his wife Brenda shrieked about federal lawsuits and insurance fraud. The air tasted metallic, like pure, distilled justice, mixing with the smell of soggy leather and ruined drywall. Water was just thundering through the drywall like a personal vendetta sent straight from the heavens, or maybe just the high Rockies. 6 months before this beautiful disaster, Brenda Sterling, a woman whose entitlement was as oversized as her McMansion, had tried to permanently silence my family's 80-year-old Willow Creek with concrete. What she didn't realize was she wasn't picking a fight with some timid neighbor. She was fighting a structural and hydrological engineer who understood, better than anyone, exactly how water finds a way, even through the most meticulously designed, unpermitted basement waterproofing. What would you do if some power-drunk HOA dictator tried to fill your family's legacy with cement? Drop a comment and tell me your worst HOA story, because I promise you, this one ends with perfect, hydrostatic equilibrium. My name is Ethan Miller, and inheriting my grandpa Ted's 3-acre slice of Cascade Ridge, Colorado was supposed to be my reset button after a nasty divorce. That crystal-clear creek, Willow Creek, had been my sanctuary. Grandpa Ted taught me to identify every bird call there, and to catch trout with my bare hands. It had flowed strong and steady for 80 years, supporting a vibrant ecosystem. More than that, it was legally untouchable. My grandfather's 1948 senior water rights made our claim older and stronger than anything built in that development. Period. As an engineer for Terraform Dynamics for 18 years, I knew the water law inside and out. First in use, first in right, and junior users, like a newly formed HOA, can never force a senior rights holder to surrender access. The creek wasn't just our family history. It kept our property values high, kept the wildlife thriving, and honestly kept our cooling costs down in the summer heat. Then Brenda Sterling arrived. Picture a woman who moved from Scottsdale with enough new money to buy the biggest house in Crestwood Heights, and enough entitlement to declare herself the Empress of the cul-de-sac. Her husband, Clark, was the typical car dealership owner, the kind of guy who drives a white Escalade with Boss Lady vanity plates, seriously, on his car. Within 4 months, Brenda had clawed her way to the HOA presidency and launched a systematic campaign of suburban tyranny, disguised as community improvement. She had a supernatural talent for finding anyone who didn't fit her narrow, beige-colored vision of perfection and grinding them down with fines, violations, and endless psychological warfare until they either paid up, conformed, or fled. I watched her terrorize Mrs. Chang, a sweet Vietnamese grandmother, into ripping out her prize-winning orchid garden because the flowers were non-native species, despite those seeds having been carried over during the war and nurtured for 50 years. I watched poor Tom, a young father building a necessary accessibility ramp for his disabled son, get slapped with a cease and desist because it was aesthetics disruptive. The war against me started with a certified letter that nearly made my blood pressure explode. Brenda demanded I remediate the water hazard, the creek, within 30 days or face a crippling $750 daily fine. The irony was so rich I almost choked on it. This woman, who likely thought water came exclusively from a filtered tap, was lecturing a hydraulic engineer about water management. When I showed up at her door with Grandpa Ted's meticulously filed 1948 water rights documents, offering reasonable compromises, a decorative fence, maybe professional landscaping, she wouldn't even pretend to look at the papers. "Precedent cannot be set for special treatment, Mr. Miller," she declared, standing in my driveway in stilettos that crunched our gravel, like she was actively trying to grind my ancestors' legacy into dust. But I'd spent nearly 2 decades dealing with massive water systems, and I understood something this suburban dictator didn't. When you try to stop a natural, powerful force that's been flowing for 80 years, it doesn't just disappear. It builds pressure. It finds another way through, usually taking the path of least resistance until it breaks whatever is foolish enough to block it. Brenda Sterling had just picked a fight with the wrong engineer, and she was about to learn that physics always wins. She wasted no time escalating. 2 weeks after our standoff, she called an emergency board meeting scheduled during work hours, a classic HOA dictatorship maneuver. It was pure theater, with her 3 hand-picked cronies nodding like dashboard toys, while she used a PowerPoint presentation to paint Willow Creek as an environmental hazard, threatening property values. The 4-1 vote was rigged, of course. Only Patricia, a retired teacher, dissented, because she still remembered what integrity felt like. Within 72 hours, I got a cease and desist from a massive, high-powered firm that charged more per hour than most people's monthly mortgage, claiming my creek violated city ordinances about uncontrolled flow. This is the core of HOA intimidation, by the way. They cite ordinances that often don't exist or don't apply, banking on the victim being too overwhelmed, too busy, and too broke to fact-check their claims. It's psychological warfare disguised as legal procedure. But Brenda's biggest mistake was underestimating how much neighbors despise a bully winning. I organized a meeting at the local spot, the Copper Kettle. 23 people showed up on a Tuesday night. The smell of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls couldn't hide the bitter stories. Mrs. Chang talking about the 50-year-old seed she had to tear up. Tom explaining how Brenda had threatened daily fines while his son was recovering from major surgery. The pattern was clear. Her friends got a gentle verbal warning. Anyone she disliked got immediate fines and legal threats. Pure protection racket psychology. My engineering background switched into high gear. I confirmed that the original 1980 HOA formation documents specifically excluded Willow Creek from all covenants because it predated the development by decades. Even better, the city planning department confirmed the creek violated 0 ordinances and was actually an officially recognized watershed habitat. The State Water Rights Commission just laughed. Grandpa Ted's 1948 rights legally trumped any HOA authority. Full stop. Armed with ironclad documentation and massive community support, I filed counter-complaints. The local kids launched a Save the Blue Dot Trout petition that collected 200 signatures across 3 school districts within a week. The trout, you see, were the local celebrity-protected species. Brenda's response to organized community resistance wasn't retreat. It was total war. She started parking her Escalade to block my driveway. She called my employer, Terraform Dynamics, claiming I was creating workplace disruption. When that failed, she filed the false health complaint with the county, claiming my stagnant water bred mosquitoes. The sweet, bitter irony, of course, was that her own decorative pond had real mosquito issues, while my flowing creek was pristine. But in dragging the county inspector, Officer Vance, into it, she lost big. Vance wasn't expecting a swamp. He found a thriving ecosystem, crystal clear, with dozens of protected blue dot trout swimming in the pools. Vance's official report didn't just clear my creek. It noted the frivolous nature of the complaint, recommending our habitat for the county's protection program. Most people don't realize filing false complaints creates an official paper trail that can destroy you in court, because government inspectors hate being used as weapons in personal vendettas. My professional network mobilized. Dr. Amanda Reese, a water quality expert, ran comprehensive tests that proved the creek water was cleaner than what flowed from most kitchen taps. 0 harmful bacteria, perfect pH, untouched mountain ecosystem. Meanwhile, Brenda hired a private investigator, Frank Brennan, to dig up dirt on me. Frank, a retired cop, came up completely empty. During their final meeting, Frank delivered the bombshell. When he told Brenda there was no scandal, she explicitly asked him to interpret normal life events as character flaws and suggested he might find creative ways to make me look unstable. That conversation changed everything. Frank's written statement documenting Brenda's attempt to suborn perjury gave my attorney, Rebecca Santos, ammunition for restraining orders and potential criminal charges. She had crossed the line from harassment into felony territory. But her most catastrophic mistake was still coming. She started recruiting new neighbors, promising reduced HOA fees, blindly approaching Dr. Patricia Kendall, an environmental scientist who'd just moved in 2 blocks over. When Patricia heard Brenda's pitch about eliminating the problematic waterway, she didn't just decline. She volunteered to testify as an expert witness about the creek's ecological importance. The amateur dictator had accidentally recruited her own star witness for the prosecution. Then came the crescendo, the final, desperate lunge. Friday evening, while I was supposed to be safely away on a work trip to Denver, the rumble of massive diesel engines sent ice through my veins. Concrete truck, Brantley Concrete Solutions, had arrived at twilight, claiming authorization for emergency creek remediation. This psychopath was planning to fill my grandfather's creek with cement under cover of darkness, creating destruction so complete it would take years and bankruptcy-level legal fees to reverse. The metallic tang of pure panic mixed with the cold mountain air. Fortunately, my neighbors had organized faster than Brenda could organize destruction. 12 text messages warned me about the concrete crew before they'd even finished unloading. My emergency drive back from Denver at 70 miles per hour gave me just enough time to coordinate the perfect counterattack. A speed dial to Deputy Sheriff Martinez, Rebecca Santos, and the county environmental officer. When I screeched into my driveway, I found Brenda standing beside the concrete mixer like some suburban warlord, screaming at the crew foreman, Javier, about decisive action. Javier, a weathered professional who'd been pouring concrete for 20 years, took one look at my water rights documentation and the deputy's badge before flatly refusing to proceed without proper permits. The smell of his cigarette mixed with Brenda's panic sweat as her surprise attack crumbled. But the real nuclear bomb was Rebecca's financial audit. It uncovered systematic embezzlement. Brenda had approved a $22,000 HOA fleet washing contract, paid directly to Clark's Mercedes dealership for work never performed on property that didn't exist. She'd looted the community pool maintenance fund to finance her personal legal crusade. And most damningly, she had quietly approved covenant violations for her own unpermitted deck addition, while terrorizing neighbors for identical infractions. She was running the HOA like her personal piggy bank while playing judge, jury, and executioner. The media explosion started when Channel 7 News called, asking for an interview after my Facebook post about the concrete truck hit 50,000 views in 6 hours. Sitting under those blazing studio lights, I explained how one person's abuse of HOA authority could destroy an entire community, unless decent people stood up with knowledge and documentation. The story went viral. Brenda's panicked Facebook video, filmed in her pristine living room, collected dislikes faster than a political scandal, especially after neighbors started sharing photos of the trespassing concrete truck and documentation of her financial mismanagement in the comments. Then, the anonymous evidence arrived. Not a package, but a set of digital photos and CAD files sent through an encrypted neighborhood forum, a gift from the gods of ironic justice. The pictures showed detailed shots of Brenda and Clark's basement renovation. Massive, unpermitted concrete work, illegal drainage modifications, and a sophisticated French drain system that had never seen a city inspector. The technical picture hit me like a lightning bolt. Brenda's $100,000 media vault renovation hadn't just violated codes. It had fundamentally hijacked the natural underground groundwater flow that had fed Willow Creek for 80 years. Her barriers and sump pump systems were designed to keep Clark's entertainment room bone dry by aggressively redirecting groundwater away from their property. But physics doesn't care about property lines. That displaced water had to go somewhere. By creating an underground dam, she'd reduced our creek's water volume by 30%, creating exactly the standing water and drainage problems she'd been blaming on me. Every single accusation she hurled at my creek, standing water, property damage risks, was actually caused by her own illegal modifications to the natural drainage system. Rebecca practically glowed with predatory satisfaction when I showed her the evidence. Ethan, this isn't just building code violations. This is environmental crime with federal teeth. The Clean Water Act makes discharging construction pollutants into storm systems a felony, carrying massive daily fines. Her unpermitted modifications require environmental impact studies costing more than most people's houses. The power had completely shifted. Brenda had spent months claiming my creek threatened their safety, while her own criminal construction caused every problem she'd blamed on me. Her expensive basement now represented a massive liability that insurance would never cover due to the unpermitted work. Compliance would require partially demolishing Clark's man cave. The War Council met at Flapjack Junction, the smell of bacon mixing with the intoxicating aroma of impending revenge. Rebecca was preparing to launch a countersuit for harassment, emotional distress, environmental crime reports, and the full financial audit. Dr. Reese had documented the creek habitat so thoroughly it was an environmental lawyer's wet dream. Patricia had weaponized her 40 years of classroom management into organizing an unstoppable political machine, focused on one goal: ending Brenda's dictatorship. The final public showdown packed the Crestwood Hall beyond fire code capacity, 160 residents crammed into a space designed for 50. Channel 7 News was broadcasting live. Brenda, 20 minutes late, demanded a closed executive session. The motion died without a second. Even her last loyal board members abandoned the sinking ship of her credibility. The financial nuclear bomb exploded when Patricia, acting as the treasurer, revealed that Brenda's personal vendetta had consumed $95,000 in community funds, completely bankrupting the HOA. Then, I delivered my presentation. Professional slides documenting the harassment timeline, Grandpa Ted's 1948 rights, the environmental protection status, and the security footage of her concrete truck ambush. The moment that ended Brenda's reign forever came when Rebecca approached the microphone, opening a letter with official letterhead. The room fell silent. The Colorado Attorney General's office has filed criminal charges against Brenda Sterling for environmental crimes, insurance fraud, embezzlement of community funds, and conspiracy to commit perjury. The words hit like thunder, exploding into cheers that shook the building. Federal EPA investigators have recommended prosecution under Clean Water Act provisions, carrying up to 5 years imprisonment and massive fines. Brenda's meltdown was spectacular. Screaming about government conspiracy and environmental terrorism, she threatened to sue God himself. Her performance was captured by every smartphone and news camera, transitioning her from suburban dictator to unhinged criminal defendant. The ultimate act of poetic, hydrological justice came right after the meeting. That night, a freak intense rainstorm hit Cascade Ridge. The pressure, long building behind Brenda's illegal underground walls, the pressure she'd caused, had finally reached critical mass. The diverted groundwater, unable to escape through the choked system, found the path of least resistance, the improperly sealed, unpermitted utility access ports in her foundation. The scene I witnessed the next morning, the one I started this story with, was beautiful. 25,000 gallons of pure mountain water had crashed through the basement ceiling, turning Clark's $100,000 media vault into a permanent, highly destructive fish tank. Brenda's consequences were inevitable. Criminal convictions, $68,000 in EPA fines, and mandatory remediation costs for the unpermitted construction bankrupted her completely, forcing the sale of their McMansion for $150,000 below market value due to environmental liens. She filed for personal bankruptcy within 4 months. I received a $30,000 settlement for harassment damages. But the real win was watching Willow Creek restored, transforming into the Grandpa Ted Memorial Conservation Center. My kids, now passionate young conservationists, identify every species in the habitat. We even had a family of river otters move in, a true sign of ecological healing. Fighting for that creek reconnected me to something sacred. I learned that protecting natural heritage requires understanding not just the technical aspects of environmental law, but the political dynamics of community organizing. And most importantly, that ordinary citizens can defeat institutional corruption when they document everything, build coalitions, and refuse to surrender. But here's the thing. It cost her everything, and it cost our community 8 months of absolute hell. Was it worth the financial and psychological damage to win this level of cosmic revenge? What is the line between fighting for justice and seeking pure, unadulterated revenge? Drop a comment below. If you've ever dealt with an HOA Karen, share your story. We're here to listen, and maybe we can inspire the next David versus Goliath victory. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories of neighborhood justice.